Good evening. The time being 7 o'clock, I'll call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Planning Board to review the proposed marijuana bylaw. I'll start out by introducing the board. On my right is Tony Kinahan. On my left is Gerald Stetson. Donna Carter is our recording secretary, and I'm Hugh Hurley, the chairman. I'll read the notice as it appeared in the Brockton Enterprise on May 8th and 15th. Notice is hereby given pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5 of the West Bridgewater zoning bylaws. The West Bridgewater Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the McDonald Brown Conference Room at Town Hall to see if the town will vote to add a new section 7.9 marijuana establishments as proposed. Copies of the proposed amendment are available at the office of the town clerk for review. All interested parties are invited to attend. This is a public hearing, as stated, called for by the Mass General Laws before we can change any of our bylaws. So we have a bylaw before us. We also, in the town meeting warrant, when the town meeting will be held on June the 4th, it's a Monday night at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium, where the townspeople will have an opportunity to vote on this. But there are several articles. Article 34 is to decide whether we're going to vote to ban non-medical marijuana. Depending on how that goes, if the town decides to allow recreational marijuana, then we're going to have this bylaw. If the town decides not to allow it, then they're going to pass on this bylaw. So we're doing something that may be needed, but if we don't do it and it is needed, we're going to be out of luck. So, and this bylaw very much mimics the medical marijuana bylaw that we put in a couple of years ago, which in fact mimics what a lot of other towns have done. We did not sit down with a blank piece of paper and write this. This is copied from other towns, which is typical of what all the towns are doing. When the legislature passed the marijuana laws, they didn't have anything in place. In fact, last year we had to have a moratorium, and everybody was having moratoriums because we didn't know what to do, because the state hadn't promulgated their regulations, so we didn't know what their regulations were going to be, so we couldn't do it. So the Attorney General allowed us to put forth a moratorium. Well, the time is up now. The state regulations are in place, so we have to act on it. So the important thing is going to be Article 34 at the annual town meeting. And then there is, if that happens, there's a couple others, but Article 36, which is what we are going to be discussing tonight, is a bylaw to establish and regulate how marijuana will be dispensed in a recreational, non-medical format. It actually pretty much verbatim follows the other one that's in place. I'm not going to go through reading the whole thing. I know if you do have any questions when we open it up to the public, because this is a public hearing, so anybody in the public will certainly have a chance to speak. But with that being said, we went to the zoning board, had a meeting last night dealing with a variance for, there is a proposed medical marijuana facility going in it's on Old Maple Street, which is at the end of Pleasant Street. It's cut off by Route 24. Old Maple Street runs between Pleasant Street and Route 24, and it continues crosses Scotland Street and comes all the way down to Forest Street. And then the other way it goes all the way to Rainham. But it's that little section between 24 and Pleasant Street was somebody wanted to have a medical marijuana dispensary. The problem they ran into is in section 7.9.5.9A, there is calls for a 500-foot buffer from the nearest boundary line of any residential zoning district or from the nearest property line of any residential use. Well, what has happened here was Route 24 is only 300 feet wide. The buffer is 500 feet wide, so it starts from the other side of 24, comes across, and comes 200 feet into this property. We as the planning board opposed granting this variance because we didn't want to see the first time the medical marijuana facility, the first one to come in, to have it get a variance from the bylaws to allow it. We didn't feel it was right because it sets a precedent and it undermines the whole bylaw. And the zoning board, whose decision it was to make last night, they concurred with us and they voted against it. That being said, we realized we had a problem. Unfortunately, when you try to write a regulation, other than the 10 Commandments, which everybody knows exactly what they say, any other law or regulation you have, nobody knows what they say for the most part, and they cause problems. Well, this particular thing we found to cause a problem. So what we're going to also be discussing tonight is to ask for an amendment. So we're going to ask for this bylaw to be passed because it's been posted and everything. We can change it. Any changes we'll have to do by amendment. So we are also going to be acting on having an amendment where we'll say this and have a comma and say, except the boundary that buffers upon the westerly side of Route 24. So what that'll do, it's a stretch from actually the Bridgewater town line, which is all, for the most part, a lot of it is in the Hockomock Swamp until you come up to Maple Street. From Maple Street up to a piece of probably a couple thousand feet north of South Elm Street, because that is adjacent to the residential on the easterly side of 24, and a section from the Route 24 Cloverleaf up to West Street, because between West Street and West Center Street, Route 24, and Beacon Street, that's all residentially zoned. So it's those two areas. Once you get to the other side of West Street, that's industrial zoned, the Spadia property, all the way up to Walnut Street. So that doesn't affect it. So it's just those two sections that we're asking for clarity in here. We don't know whether the people are going to appeal it or not. They could very well appeal it, but looking at it, we've got a good buffer in 24. We've got 300 feet that nobody can walk across that. So it certainly separates it from the neighborhood. So we'll be discussing that also. I think that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any member of the board have any question on anything? Or? With that being said, I'll open it up to the public. If anybody has anything, I ask that you excuse me, identify yourself. I'm not sure whether that mic will pick it up. If anybody does, why don't you just pick the mic up if you do want, so that they'll be able to hear you. I don't know whether that one's working. Did you want to be?
I'll take my turn.
Okay.
Anyone else wants to go first?
Okay. I ask that you identify yourself for the record, and yes, sir. Oh, ma'am.
John Cream, 96 South Elm Street.
Yep.
I just, first of all, wanted to be sure. I understand that you're making an amendment to allow the first medical marijuana location to actually be a possibility? No?
No. This will not affect the medical marijuana bylaw. That's already in effect.
Okay.
This will just affect the new one.
Okay.
The,
So the medical marijuana facility wanted to come in, but the buffer area from the town line,
it's a 500-foot buffer.
yeah,
300 feet of it is Route 24,
Mhm.
so it came into their property by 200 feet.
so their property is right on the,
Their property goes right up to the,
so they were turned down.
they were turned down for the variance. That was all they were before the zoning board of appeals. They were not in there for anything else. In the process, they applied to the town, and it was determined or noticed that they were in violation of the bylaw because they were in the buffer zone. So they chose to come to the zoning board of appeals to address the issue, and the zoning board decided not to grant the variance.
So the amendment that you were discussing is to amend the recreational
It'll be
rules
for the
so that no recreational store runs into the same problem?
Yes, sir. And the reason for that is if the bylaw is too restrictive, the Attorney General will throw it out. And then we're messed up. And all of these parcels, they have the ones that are up against off of Pleasant Street, they're running from 1,000 to maybe 1,500 feet deep. When you get up to Manley Street, you're talking a distance of probably 1,200 feet back from Manley Street to it. So one of the things we'd be concerned about is somebody could, if they had a parcel, say where Somerville Lumber is, that lumber yard up there, say that property wanted to say, we want to do this. What they could do is they could cut off 200 feet off of the back of their property and deal it to some straw person, and then we're going to be losing out on that much rentals, tax revenue. We're going to be cramping things up, and it really isn't the idea of it. So that's why we're proposing it, to allow it, and probably at a later date we may come back and address the other one. But one of the things, if the recreational one goes through, probably the medical marijuana one is probably going to go away, because if anybody can go get it, why worry about getting a card and everything else? But I don't know the whole logistics of how this thing works, but just picking up some of it, and I've heard another, one of the things that they're saying is if recreational comes, it'll probably negate the medical marijuana one.
So, as far as zoning is concerned, we have residential zones and we have industrial zones. Is there a commercial zone, like?
We have a residential and farming zone, which is what, in fact, where you live,
Yeah.
is what it is. We have a business zone, which is 500 feet on either side of Route 106 and Route 28.
Mhm.
And then we have an industrial zone, which is the other side of Route 24 from the Bridgewater line up to the Walnut Street line. And then there's a couple of other exceptions. The Spadia property, which is on the easterly side of Route 24 from West Street to Walnut Street. I believe the Spadia property on Manley Street at the eastern Brockton line, I believe that got rezoned, and what used to be or was going to be the Enterprise off of Walnut Street, that's I forget whether it's a business or
They
industrial.
were gonna put the radio towers there.
Yes. But for the most part, everything on the other side of 24, other than north of Walnut Street, some residential and farming in there, is an industrial zone. Everything this side is either the farming and residential, or the 500 feet on either side, so these 1,000-foot corridors along our two named highways,
106.
and 28, yes, sir.
So, like the liquor stores, they're in a business zone, they're 500 feet on either side of, but we're treating recreational marijuana differently by zoning it in an industrial area?
They, yes. The reason being, and this is what the guidelines have come down, and that's why we basically copied somebody else, is to get it out of the residential areas, and that'd be the industrial area.
But, I mean, it's a business zone.
No, the marijuana is going to be in the industrial
Well,
area.
that's my question.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ron Creed,
Could-
96 South Elm Street. I am 21 for the record, and I know I look about 12. What my father, I believe, is trying to express here, is it's confusing, and that it's okay to have liquor stores in a close to residential area, or in a residential area, and not cannabis dispensary, is because the only reason cannabis dispensaries have taken this long to be legalized in this area is because after Prohibition and was dissolved, we were able to maintain the stigma against marijuana, basically by associating it with Mexican Americans.
In the social studies class here.
Okay, yeah.
Basically.
But actually, in fact, at the ZBA hearing, we were talking about the 500 feet that they're using in here is the 500 feet that they use, the distance that you can put a liquor establishment, whether it's a package store or a tavern or a bar, is 500 feet. So I'm sure that whoever the author of this was, that's where they came up with that number. That
But
was
you're still
a
zoning
number
it
that has been
differently.
established or addressed by law.
But
Neither
you're-
of us is raising an issue with the buffer, or
Okay.
we're saying it doesn't really make sense to zone them differently.
So who made that decision? I guess is the
That's the way it was written.
People a long time before us.
The state? Is that the state rule?
No, it's goes back years and years and years.
No.
For the recreational.
Well, the recreation, that's all brand new.
There are some, Fred Adams from Brewster Road, there are several towns that have decided to open it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
why
we're
aren't
gonna
we?
sell marijuana in business zones, and they don't care if they open 20 or 30 stores, like in Colorado, when you look down that street, and every other store is selling marijuana. Some towns have absolutely become very aggressive, and they say, let 10 or 15 open, if 2 or 3 close, who cares, we still get the revenue.
I don't think we need as many as we have, for example, vape stores or donut shops. But maybe there's room to put a restriction on the number the same way we license liquor stores.
Well, actually,
It does.
there is a restriction. They have to be 1,000 feet apart, so we don't get them.
But you also
Well,
have a
boom.
percentage of liquor stores.
Yeah, it's tied. Oh, that's in the agreement. Are you reading from now, isn't it, Mr. Adams?
It was in this bylaw.
It's in the bylaw
It is in
too.
the bylaw.
Okay.
It refers to liquor stores and some percentage of the
Okay.
number of outstanding licenses that are in place for liquor stores.
Okay.
And,
Section
so my-
7.9.11.B. Yeah,
so
they
One
did.
of
They
my
did.
questions was, how many liquor store licenses do we have?
We got a lot of them. I'm not sure.
We don't have a limit on them in West Bridgewater, do we?
I believe
Yes.
we do.
State mandates.
I'm sorry?
The state mandates that.
And what's
The
our number?
ABCC.
What's our number here?
So could you identify yourself?
Anthony Kinahan. We have, I believe, 3 that can go anywhere, and we have new ones that are additional that are specific to the Kmart area. No one has chosen to take those up yet, but there are a couple available over there that are specific to the area. And then there's, I believe, 3 off-premise licenses that can be anywhere throughout town, meeting the zoning requirements.
It says it will not exceed 20% of the number of licenses issued by the town for retail sale of alcohol.
Yes, right.
So it's 20% of whatever that number is. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay, great. So I guess my question is, who decided this?
This
Because if
was actually put together by the town administrator. And this is, if you get the medical marijuana and the recreational marijuana, they're virtually the same, because you want regulations to be the same. So and they got it from somebody else, and I'm not sure
Okay,
who
so-
they were. This will be
We're
the
not-
same as several other towns around.
Right, so do the people who live here have any say in?
Yes, we're not interested in the precedent, we're interested in direct democracy.
Okay, yes, to answer your question, you will have a say.
We will.
Monday night.
Yes
What
or
you
no?
say is yes or no.
You will have a say on
The zoning?
on both the warrant article to whether this is even allowed, and then on this article here, and amendments can be made on the floor. There is a procedure for doing it.
Suggestion too, if you prepared to make an amendment, make sure you've done your right, it has to be in writing, present, and it's not something that all of a sudden you raise your hand and you go up and have it well prepared and make it look good, because it's gotta be handed to the town moderator for him to read, plus you're gonna have to read it and answer to it.
She,
In summary, just
moderator.
the public opinion that we were trying to express is, it just doesn't seem right to tell these stores that they have to be in the industrial area because they're pot, whereas the liquor stores can be in the business area where, because they're liquor. You're drawing a distinction between the two that actually doesn't exist anymore because recreational marijuana is legal. So it's just as legal as liquor, but we're saying it's more dangerous or something. It has to be further separated from the residential areas by being put in the industrial
Okay.
areas.
If you did that, you would not have the 500-foot buffer from the zone, because the business zone is only 500 feet wide.
But you just said that the liquor stores do have the 500-foot buffer, why
They-
couldn't
they-
they
they-
be addressed similarly?
The liquor stores have a 500-foot from a church. That's the only thing that the liquor does. The liquor can be in a business area, but so if you want to allow it in a business zone, you gotta say goodbye to all buffer zones areas. And but it's something to think about.
That's actually a reason that I hadn't seen, so I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought it up.
Back a number of years ago, we had, I think when the industrial zone started, I won't use the word picked on, we had adult entertainment problems in town. Okay, they wanted to put a bookstore in the center of town and all type of.
They had one.
Yeah, they had one that came in actually before but didn't survive. This is when the industrial zone was started to be used, because the Attorney General in the state said, you can't just say no. You've got to give them a place. So I think this is just piggyback on, we're giving them a place. Because if we said we're not allowing nothing in town, Attorney General's going to come back and say, hey, you got to come up with something. So I think because originally we put the adult entertainment, and I think there was something else at that time too, in the industrial zone, that we're basically piggybacking, because we're lucky in this town, our industrial zone is in one central location. I mean, if you look at some towns, industrial zones they're just a spot here and all over the place. But I think it piggybacks on going back, gotta be 20-something years ago.
By equivalating porn with something that stops children from having seizures?
No, it's just a law that needed to be put into effect, and you can't, the state has come down on many laws and says you can't just say no. You've got to say, give a reason, and this is what we're leaning on.
So the industrial area presumably can handle the additional traffic because there are trucks going up and down those streets presumably all the time.
Actually, the industrial zone, Manley Street probably has one of the best roads for handling traffic, and they've got their own set of lights when they get out on the end of it. If they extend into Brockton, they've got sets of lights. It's easy to get to the Route 24. It's easy to get to Route 138. 106 bisects it. The industrial place is a very good place for any additional traffic.
And does it have sort of its separate access, or are people gonna have to go through 106 to get there? I'm sorry, I haven't got a map in front of me.
Well,
106 is a state road, so
Right, but I guess I'm just asking, if we, by putting it in the industrial area, assuming that there's going to be a lot of volume going to that location, especially since every other town has pretty much voted against recreational marijuana, we'd be the only local town in the area that I know of that would, if we did, vote yes. Everybody in this area would be driving through West Bridgewater to get there.
well, everybody drives through West Bridgewater as it is.
I think that's the concern.
And-
What we don't need is more cars.
So I don't really think that's an issue, but the industrial area can handle it easier than any of the other areas, especially if they're coming off of Route 24. Whereas if we put it on over by, say, East Street area or something like that, now they come off at 24 and because 106 is so jammed up, they'd all be going the side
You would
roads
think
all
on
the
the
way.
golf course.
Well, that's
that's where they're
town.
gonna grow it.
Okay, yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Adams.
Fred Adams from Brewster Road. My first comment would be that medical marijuana in Massachusetts is on its way out and will be gone in a matter of a few years. Based on studies from the 3 states that have had legalized marijuana for the last 2 or 3 years, there's a continual closure of medical marijuana stores, because why go through the process that you have to in Massachusetts just to get recreational marijuana? So anything that the town does for medical marijuana, it's going to turn into recreational marijuana anyway, down the road. So I think the town should be progressive from the tax revenue basis alone. Because first of all, in the law, it says you can get a 3% host fee and negotiate other things as well of sales. And I think this, as you read this law, this bylaw, it really, I think, is targeted towards retail sales versus the grower. And I think what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can really help the marijuana cultivator and the growth, which you have a restriction here of 10,000 square feet. And that's a small facility, especially if you're going to sell marijuana and grow it. Okay, and I think really the number should be in the 20 to 30,000 square foot range for building a plant for growing, okay? Because that's where you'll get some wonderful revenue. And a lot of these people around the state now have growing facilities, and they're gonna take those and then they're gonna sell them in other towns that have allowed legal marijuana. So I think that if we could encourage and land a couple growers on a 3% basis, it would really add a lot to the tax revenue, in addition to their taxes on the real estate. So those are-
Well, listening to the presentation that they made last night to the zoning board, they are going to have a 4,000 square foot of growing, so it'd be a 40 by
Yeah, you
100
said that, just, yeah.
area. And they felt that was very sufficient. It's all inside, it's all under light, so the sun will be shining 24/7. The rain will come whenever it should come. It'll
Well, they
never
let the
get
water-
dry.
yeah, it's
It'll never
high tech.
get over. It'll be the ideal conditions.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But what they're doing is they're saying this is the facility for this one store. I'm saying growing marijuana, period, in a larger facility that can be sold in other retail locations. Okay? I think theirs is limited to just that one location. That was my main point. The other point was, I would suggest that we add in 7959G that it's 500 feet from anywhere children congregate, which would be more general and include anything that we might have left out of this.
Yep.
Okay?
What do you mean by any place that children would congregate?
A children's gym. An ice skating rink.
Okay, recreational area.
Would you consider that recreation? Gym?
A gym could just be a recreational.
I don't know. So-
Yeah, no, but that, if that was the case, it, will be, actually,
I don't know how Mr. Lucini and company would look at that.
yeah, I don't know, it'd
Or I don't know how
be,
the building
yeah,
inspector would look at
yeah,
it. It's even
it'd
worse.
be, and if it, although we've got the daycare centers and stuff in here too, I could see that may be coming to, they have to walk it down to the bus stop for the school bus, and they're all waiting there. It's two. There's children, plural, congregating there. It comes out. We don't want to make this thing so complicated. The town council has to keep rendering legal opinions every time we do it either.
7962. Top of the
79.
next page.
7962. Okay.
Cultivation of marijuana for recreational use. Does that, if I had the other bylaw with me, would that say cultivation of medical marijuana, or cultivation of marijuana for medical use? I
I do.
apologize for not reading that before I came.
I do have the other
I
bylaw.
knew you did, yeah.
Because I knew you were going to ask that. So we got. The other one is 7.8.6.2A, cultivation of cultivation of marijuana for medical use, in parentheses, horticultural.
Okay.
I believe I did not do a spell check on it and a
I know,
word for word, but
I wouldn't have been.
it was, I recognized I have read this many times, and in fact, we cleaned up a couple things initially, and I knew that I had seen it before, but, and, yeah, the intent was to copy it over.
And 7972 is really, this is not in a lot of other towns' bylaws. This is a great ad,
Say that, excuse me, can you say that again, please?
7972. The next to last page.
Okay,
This is a great ad, this paragraph. A lot of towns do not have this for the safety and special permit issues. This is a wonderful paragraph.
This is input from our police chief, Victor
Okay.
Flaherty,
Okay,
who has been very concerned about this right from the get-go. He deals with people that are doing this. So he was very concerned, and I believe that some of this is taken from. They didn't completely invent this. It is this kind
I'm
of.
sure it's in some, but it's
So-
not in all of them.
No, I'm sure, yes. But he wants to be very careful with it.
The security, the whole routine. It's
Yeah.
all cash and it's
Yeah.
all marijuana.
Yeah,
You know, it's a high-risk neighborhood, it
Yes.
really is.
yeah.
The process, it needs security, no
Yeah.
question about it.
It's a lot too, which is outside of what we're doing which is the state and the federal regulations coming in. So what we're trying to do is, if this does get approved, is we have something in place that we can have some kind of control of, because we don't want to have it popping up in a business zone, which if we didn't have this, it would, quote, be a business, and it could pop up in a business zone.
Mhm.
Which
So those
would-
are my thoughts. I'm
Okay.
saying we need the 3% revenue. I would
Okay.
encourage the growing, not necessarily retail growing in a larger facility.
Okay,
I really would. Because it's 3% plus the host agreement.
right,
I mean, you really can get some additional benefits, there's no question about it.
okay. Is there any further concerns?
The section on hours of operation, 7954.
Oh, that's another problem.
Basically, we're saying you have to be closed from 8P to 8A.
Yeah,
If someone's growing or cultivating, in essence, they're open 24 hours a day.
Yep.
I think we should say no sales. We should limit this to retail sales.
what number was it?
7954. So that requires clarification. I mean, you can go about your growing or cultivating business as many hours as it takes. Sales are limited to 8 a.m. to 8
Yeah,
p.m.
I think the operation was definitely the sales, and I think that was the intent that the proponents that were looking
Oh,
at.
I'm sure it was the intent. but
Last night.
I think it's a loophole for growers.
This is written for sales,
Yeah,
okay, and he's absolutely right, because I did have that highlighted. You need access, and someone, you might have a second or third shift if you're a growing facility. It's a
in
problem.
fact, they said that they would be probably looking at a 10 to 8 p.m., 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. They didn't see any they didn't think they need to be open. But they did say that they would have people in the gardeners working at
But
other.
I don't think you can under this bylaw. The way you just read it, I read it the same way.
Yeah, I think if we just
Hours of
clarify that,
operation, which means sales, growing, everything.
that's my point.
Well, you
Yeah,
can't
that's what I
grow.
mean.
So it should
Jerry,
be
you
limited
can't
to
grow.
sales.
No, you
gotta-
can't grow between 8 and 10. You've got to grow 24 hours a day.
That's right.
So if you put the operating sales for retail is 8 to 8. Retail sales.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's what needs to be added. That's what's missing. Because somebody with a deep pocket, which a lot of these people have, we're going to have a lawyer that's going to beat that to death.
That's a good catch.
And the medical says hours of operation. So, looking to change the word operation to sales.
Or some way that you can grow 24 hours a day. Sales,
How
absolutely.
about just add to the end of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. between the hours of 18 for retail sales.
Well, I think we can clean up the language. We don't have to necessarily do it this instant.
Well, we have to decide what.
Okay,
If
Then I think it's simple enough that the restriction applies to retail sales,
so should we change the word operation to sales?
to retail sales.
Retail sales.
Operation.
If you're buying
retail
wholesale, you
sales.
can still come in.
So hours of
Retail sales.
retail sales and strike operation.
Yeah.
I think that might work.
Okay.
Oops. I also, on,
I mean, the next one you have, the one above it, is drive-through services for the purpose of dispensing marijuana prohibited. That there's already companies out there that will deliver marijuana.
And that would, and that would fall under its, I mean,
I have
town
no
couldn't
clue.
regulate that.
I don't know how, I have no clue how you do that.
It comes with an Amazon smile.
Probably does.
You know, if they're knocking off the poor pizza boy, you can see them. They'd be knocking off the pot
When you
delivery
go
boy.
to one in Brockton at the old Star Print, most of those people in line have $500 to $700 in cash in their pocket going in that door to buy marijuana. Okay? I mean, it's a big cash business.
And if
Well, it has to be cash because they can't.
Can't deposit in a bank, because it's against the federal law.
the thing too is if we vote it down in this town, they're only going to go 2 miles up the street because Brockton's already said they're going to allow it.
Yeah,
And Bridgewater already has it on Elm Street,
yeah, they do. They're
just
there.
over the line. In fact, I believe it's 2 facilities
Two
over
They
there.
put an addition on it already.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I think we should grow I think we should allow the cultivation at a
Did-
decent size.
Get up at the town meeting and make
I've
your
never been
argument.
known to speak at any of those public hearings, you know that, Mr. Howard.
Okay. I know how bashful you are. Yes, Mr. Adams. You had another thing, Mr. Kinahan?
Under 797 site plan, is this the planning board responsibility?
No, this is going to be,
It says special permit granting authority, which
is going to be the ZBA.
ZBA.
Yes.
But
So
we're
my
gonna
question
still
is, should
have
it
to
be the
look at
ZBA?
it.
Yes, I think it should. One of the problems that we've run into is that the planning board, by the Zoning Enabling Act, which is where the special permits comes under, isn't really set up for it because you have to have a supermajority. So out of a 5-member board, you have to have 4 yes votes. ZBAs are set up with alternates, so they have 5 full members and they have 2 alternates. And I think that was one of the questions when we initially came up with it, and I think it's a better board to handle it and do it. The planning board still gets to review the site plan as any site plan submitted. Every board has an opportunity to review it. As it is, the only ones we get correspondence from is the Board of Selectmen. And when something comes up before the zoning board, we usually will, if we have any concerns, we will send in our comments too. In fact, that's how the variance came up with the one on Maple Street, as we noticed it and we spoke about it. We also spoke about the condition of the roadway, and there was some other things that were definitely planning board issues.
Right, we have a different set of concerns.
And
in our business, right.
Mr. Plassey had been before us, and he hadn't been living up to his.
Every meeting I went to with the ZBA for a year.
Yeah. So
Wouldn't it come before us though on the Water Protection Act? District? If it fell under water protection, we're the sole
yeah,
one for
there-
that.
there
So
would-
we'd end up having to see it if it fell in the district.
yeah, then we would.
Yeah, the question is who grants the special permit?
Usually if it falls within the water protection district, then we get the whole
We could.
thing. We have got.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they have to. Well, yes, they are. Really, industrial areas is in the water protection.
Only the upper part. Only from West Center Street up. West Center.
Not United Drive?
Yeah, United Drive, West Center Street up.
Yeah.
Going back
Oh,
to,
actually, no, it takes in Lowell's and Shaw's too. Does come over a little bit.
if you go back to that 500-foot buffer for 1 minute, 7959.
7959.
And it's 500 feet from the nearest boundary line of any residential zoning distance or from the nearest boundary line of any residential use. Does that require clarification? Are we saying if it's zoned residential, that's it? Or if it's being used residential? I mean, we have residential buildings in business areas, things like that.
What happens is we have an area at Pleasant Street near where the from end of South Elm Street, we have some residences in there. Coming up Pleasant Street, when you get up near West Center Street, we have some residences in there. When we cross the street, we have the Continuum Care, which is a nursing home, so it's 500 feet around there. We come up Manley Street to West Street. Between Manley and Noonan on the northerly side, there's a Montessori school,
Take care, yeah.
daycare. We come up Manley Street to, just before you get to Walnut Street, where Billy Cavadas lives, and there's a daycare center adjacent to that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 islands within this industrial zone, which are also protected by the 500-foot, yes.
So in this case, we're talking about residential use
Yes.
as opposed to zoning.
Yeah, in residential use, or in the case of continuing care at a nursing home is called out.
It is,
So that one, does that, when you get up by Billy Cavadas, that's a childcare center. When you get on West Street, that's the Montessori school, is that a daycare or just a
It's
daycare?
It's their own, yeah,
Yeah.
the kids are
It's
there.
gone.
Those definitely are, and then down at, by South Elm Street and, Pleasant Street near where the Barrett's is, those are 2
Houses
residential
right there, these are
residential
parents'
usage.
parking lot.
It's industrial zone, but it's residential use. It's a grandfathered.
Okay, so residential use is the preferred rather than residential zone.
Well, it's both.
Well, no, what I'm saying is there is residential use within areas that are not residentially zoned, right?
That is correct, and that is picked up. Zoning district from the boundary line of any zoning district, which would be such as Walnut Street. North of Walnut Street is residential, or from the nearest property line of any residential use. And then we come down to E, which is 500 feet from any group daycare center, family daycare center, nursing home, or hospital. And somewhere in here is school, like, I know schools. C is the church or religious, which, okay, we don't have any churches. The church is beyond Walnut Street.
Just stop at Walnut Street.
It stops at Walnut Street, yeah. It stops 500 feet before Walnut Street. Because of the buffer.
And the G, it says private or public school.
Say that again?
G says private or public school.
Yes. Okay, is there any further comment? Okay, I'll close this public hearing. We're going to be voting on the amendments that we were talking about. Let's vote on the amendments before we vote on the recommendation. The first amendment will be to the district. Okay, the first amendment will be to section 7.9.5.9A.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
You don't take shorthand
No,
anymore?
not that fast.
I'm sorry, Donna.
That's right.
7.9.5.9.A,
Thank you.
which reads, 500 feet from the nearest boundary line of any residential zoning district or from the property, from the nearest property line of any residential use, which we will change and put a comma in and say, except the boundary adjacent to Route 24. So I'll entertain a motion to,
Move to change the,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
yep.
Aye.
Aye, the vote is unanimous of the three present. The next amendment is... is 7.9.5.4. 7954, which reads, the hours of operation of a marijuana establishment shall be set. So we're going to strike the word operation and insert the word retail sales. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous of the three present. Now we have to vote to recommend for or against this bylaw in its entirety to the moderator,
I move
to the Board of
recommend it.
Selectmen, and to the town meeting voters. We have a motion to vote to recommend it. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The vote is 3-0.
Or unanimous.
Of the three.
Okay, I want to thank everybody that came tonight. The most important thing is the annual town meeting, which is going to be on Monday, June 4th at 7 p.m. at the West Bridgewater High School auditorium. And I invite everybody, or encourage everybody, to go there, where you will have a chance to vote on it's 40-some articles here, but these two in particular, the one to whether we vote to allow retail sales, and also if we vote to allow retail sales, then it will be put on the, you will have a chance to vote on the recreational sales one. If the retail sales is turned down, this is going to be tabled. So it's a safeguard out there. But I certainly encourage everybody to go there and vote. Thank you, everybody. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yep.